Hi guys, welcome back to another video on Next.js 15. I've been getting requests from my viewers that create a tutorial on unit testing in Next.js project. So this video are specifically on the request of those guys. So I will be using Next.js 15 version for writing unit test, and this video is totally for beginners as well as those developers who have an understanding about unit testing in other technologies and want to write unit test in Next.js projects. So Next.js also have this document for configuring our Next.js project with unit testing with different libraries. I'll be using Jest and React testing library for writing unit test. If you are a beginner, I will start off from scratch. What is unit testing? What are the pros and cons of unit testing? When we need to write unit test? What is the benefit of unit testing? What is the difference between Jest and React testing library? So all these things I will be talking about during this video. So quickly, what is unit testing, which I want to talk about in few seconds. Let's say this is a web page that you have built and you want to write unit test for. First of all, let's talk about what is unit. Every single text, every single functionality that exists on this page can be considered as a unit. So starting off with the header. In the header, we can write a unit test that whether the logo is visible or not. This can be a one unit test. We can check whether the header contain showcase link or not. This is one unit test. Whether the spelling of showcase is correct or not. When we click on this showcase, whether it navigates us to the showcase page or not. When we hover over showcase, what happens, whether it changes the color or not. So we can write any kind of unit test depending upon the functionality, depending upon the behavior. It's not only about the UI, whether text exists, what is the size of text, what is the color of text, whether it's visible or not. It can be the functionality as well. For example, if I click on this search bar, whether this model gets visible or not. When I start writing something, then whether the result below this search bar changes or not. So there can be thousands or millions of code blocks or units that we want to test in our application. There can be the multiple pages. Each page can have thousands of units. And during this video, if I try to explain what is the benefit of unit test and what are the disadvantages of unit test, you might not be able to understand this concept at this time if you are a beginner. So do watch this video completely if you want to understand how to write unit test, how to configure Next.js, what is the benefit of it, what are the disadvantages of it, to cover different aspects of writing unit test. And when we need to write unit test, when we don't need to write unit test, what is the cost of it, what is the maintenance cost of it. So let's quickly see what it says. I've already explained you what is testing. So it says unit testing involves testing individual units or blocks in isolation. In React, a unit can be a single function, hook, or a component. And I'll come back to this and I'll be explaining you by myself later on during this video. And I've opened up these links. This is the Jest, which is an awesome framework, and it can be used with other technologies as well: Babel, TypeScript, Node, React, Angular, Vue, and much more. And this particular technology is used by many big companies. You can see that Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, Airbnb, Instagram. So these companies uses Jest for testing their code. Okay, and I'll be using React testing library, and you can see how many weekly downloads it has. This is huge, and this is specifically for testing React component. As you know, Next.js is a framework built on top of React, so we can write components, React components in Next.js as well. So let's move further and click on Jest, and here it is giving us few instructions which I will not be following as it is because of some requirements that I want to explain you. But I will be usually installing these kinds of packages which it is suggesting, and I'll be initializing it and I'll be configuring it according to my own needs. So I've opened up VS Code and opened up an empty folder. Let's create a new Next.js 15 project. So in the terminal, first of all, make sure you have a latest stable version of Node and npm installed in your system. All right, so I'm using nvm ls. Let's go and use npm version 21. So currently I'm using 21.7.1. all right, for this particular project locally. Now I'm going to write npx create next app dash at and I can write latest, but currently Next.js 15 version is in RC mod in beta version. So I need to write RC right over here. Later on in few months, it's going to get stable. Then you can write latest and it's going to install the Next.js 15 version. Right now, if I write latest, it's going to install Next.js 14 version. So I need to write RC to install the beta Next.js 15 version and space dot, because I don't want to create a new folder for this project. Okay, and hit enter. It's going to ask me a few questions, whether I want to go with the TypeScript, yes, ESLint, yes, Tailwind CSS, yes, no for source directory, app router, no for turbo pack. I will only be focusing on unit testing. So import alias, no. So it's getting downloaded, it's installing few packages right now, not unit testing packages, just general Next.js project. Meanwhile, it is getting downloaded. Let me quickly show you. This is my channel, and here you can see that if I go to the playlists, and I've created a lot of videos, 193 videos, and most of these videos are related to React and Next.js. And if I open up this tutorial series, view full playlist, you can see that I've created a lot of videos on Next.js 15 covering up pretty much every topic for you to become a good Next.js developer. And here, if I click on Next.js 14 tutorial, you can also follow these tutorials while building Next.js 15 application, and it contains 40 plus videos covering up everything: SEO, designing, upgrading, authentication, authorization, e-commerce application, subscription, authorization with clerk, kind, auth 0, next auth, version 5, theming, mutations, and all these different topics I've covered in this particular video. And you can see I'm putting a lot of effort building these videos for you guys. So do subscribe my channel and like my videos as well. And this tutorial is very important. And in this video, I have explained you everything, pretty much everything about routings and layout. And routings and layouts covers almost 80% of Next.js if you already know React. And other than this, I have created video on the tour guide, creating full stack applications, and all these different things, including complete REST API backend as well, debugging techniques with the beginner and advanced level plugins and packages, Docker, CI/CD, all these different things that you need to build a production level, production ready Next.js 14, 15, or any version of Next.js applications. And also, if you want to get any development services from me, do contact me on LinkedIn. I have given the link of my LinkedIn profile directly on my YouTube page. So let's go back, and here it is installed already. And currently you can see that it contains the default folder structure. First of all, for writing unit tests, you need to be a developer. It is not the job of a manual tester who manually test your application, or we usually call it a QA testing. Okay, so you need to be a developer to write unit test, because it requires development understanding. So in the terminal, I'm just going to clear this out. And first of all, let's go over here. Let me close these links. And here in this particular page, I've already initialized my Next.js project. I've not used this command. It was also using Jest and Jest app configuration while creating a new Next.js project. I've not used that. Let's come down, and I'm using npm. I'm going to copy this whole command, and I'm going to paste it over here, and it's going to install Jest environment. So currently I'm using Next.js 15 version, and it requires force. Later on, when it is going to get stable, React 19 is there, you will not be needing force tag to write over here. So this is just optional for now. So I will writing hyphen force at the end. So now it is going to install all these packages. Next, what we have after that, we need to install this npm init jest latest, and it is going to configure our project with required configuration files. For example, jest.config.ts and jest setup.ts. And few more configurations in our ts config, which is already added over here. All right, so let's wait for it. It is getting installed, all these different packages. So it is installed. Let's initialize it with Jest. So in the documentation, this is the command that I need to copy. Let's paste it over here. Let's hit enter. And it is asking few questions. So I'm gonna go with, would you like to use Jest when running test in package.json? Yes, I want to add that. Would you like to use TypeScript for configuration files? Yes. I want to go with JS DOM, and I want to have a coverage report. Coverage means that how much code is being tested while writing unit tests. Okay, and now here I will go with the V8. Automatically clear mock calls instance constant result before any tests. So I wanna go with yes. So currently it is configured. Now, first of all, what happened is I wanna go over here. Let's come over here, let's copy this thing and let's paste it over here. So currently it's using Jest, and I'm going to copy this line as well. Let's paste it over here. All right, and at the end I need to wrap this whole configuration with this create Jest config. So at the bottom I'm going to write it like this. Okay, and let's go one by one and see what we have in the configuration. So we have the clear mocks, which is true. Collect coverage, true. Coverage is equal to coverage. We are using V8. And if we go down, it should show this test environment JS DOM. And another thing that I want to add over here, it is showing us this thing. This is the line which we need to add in our configuration, and we need to create this particular file. So I'm going to copy this line, and here this is where it is already added. So I'm going to paste it over here and add the comma at the end. Let's save it. And here at the root, let's create a new file, and this is going to be the jest.setup.ts. Okay, so let's save it, and I'm going to copy this particular line and let's paste it over here. All right, let's see what we have here, and after that we can write these particular commands. So let's go over here. It should be already added. So this is the particular command that we need to write to run the unit test in the whole application. It's going to go through wherever the unit test exists, it's going to run it. But we can also add this watch, means that whenever we make changes in our code, it's going to rerun the unit test automatically. All right, so let's paste this command over here and let's go down, and after that we are done with the whole configuration. Let me verify if we have this ts config already added, this one ts config, and I don't think we need to make any change over here because we have already initialized our project. All right, so now I'm going to test by writing the first unit test whether our configuration is successfully added or not. So this is an example unit test that it has written. This is the component, and here this is the unit test for this component. This unit test is actually verifying whether this home text is visible in this component or not by using these pre-built functions providing by React testing library. So I will not be using this particular example. Instead, let's try to see if our configuration is successfully done. First of all, whenever I try to install these kinds of packages, first of all I refresh the whole window of VS Code so everything is synced properly, and also I try to run the project as well so that our .next folder gets created as well. And if I go over here, it should be working on localhost 3000. All right, so now you can see that this is the default UI provided by page.tsx, and here I will just be removing everything which is added over here, and I will be adding a default div, and I will be moving everything at the center so we know what kind of UI we have and what kind of testing we want to write against that particular UI. So this is going to be a Tailwind CSS. I will not be explaining you how to write Tailwind CSS, how to create a form, how to create a CRUD applications. This is not the part of this video. Instead, I will be adding those things from my notes, but the main focus should be the unit testing for this particular tutorial. All right, so this is the home which I have added. Let's go over here. You can see that it has the background black, and this is the home. All right, and also let's come over here and remove everything that we have over here, the default styling and default background color. So this is the home which is being visible. All right, so let's close this out, and now let's create a new folder. This is going to be the components, and inside this components I'm going to create a new component file, home.tsx, and this is going to contain, let's write a home for now. All right, this is a text, and let's write home.test.tsx. All right, so this is the testing file, and it should contain the unit testing only specific to this component. It is not compulsory, we can write any other unit tests as well if we want, but it is a good practice to create a separate testing file for each component that we have in our project. So first of all, over here in our home testing file, we might be having any particular utility function that takes two numbers and return us the sum of those numbers. Okay, so currently for testing our configuration, I'm not going to test this particular text. Instead, let's say we have a utility function in any other file. Let's assume I've directly added that function over here. Sum, it takes two numbers and return me the sum. All right, I want to test if I pass 2 and 3, whether it returns 5 or not. If it returns 5, it means that this function is truly added. It is working fine. So this is one unit test. It is not a part of UI, but it is the functionality within the code that can be tested, and then that can be called a unit against which we want to write a unit test. So first of all, I'm going to add this particular import, and we can actually import few function from React testing library. Fire event, render, screen, this is to test the components. But first of all, let's try to write a unit test for this particular sum. All right, let me reload the page so that this gets imported correctly. Okay, and here first of all I need to write test, and against this test I can write a description that what this test is going to do. Adds 2 plus 3 should be equal to 5. Okay, we can test it with any number of values as we want, because we want to test that sum function. And here it is suggesting me few things, because I'm using Super Maven extension of VS Code. That is quite helpful, and it suggests quite useful lines of code while I'm writing the code. So I'm going to hit tab to select what it is suggesting. So let's save it and let's close it. And here let's ignore this kind of error. So currently it is suggesting that we need to also install the Jest types. Okay, so let's copy this particular command and paste it over here by installing this particular. And yeah, we are using the RC version, so I need to write force after that so that it gets installed. So now it is installed. Let's reload the window and this error should be gone. All right, the error is gone. Now in order to run the unit test for all the testing file in our project, we need to write either the test or test watch command. Test watch command is going to keep on running as we keep on changing, but let's try to run this Jest command by running this test command. So in the terminal, I'm going to write npm run test, which is the value of this key. And if I hit enter, let's see if it runs unit test. So currently you can see that it is throwing error and it is saying TS node required. So let's install TS node. So TS node, hit enter. So it's going to get installed. Yes, it is installed. All right, I forgot that I need to write force because I'm using beta versions for these things. So now let's run this command npm run test, hit enter. All right, so our code is running and our configuration is successfully fine, and this is the result it is showing to us. And it has automatically detected that there is a file with a component name .test.tsx, and there was only one unit test within that particular file. This was the description to it, and this unit test validated that if we pass 2, 3 to this particular function, this should be equal to 5. These are the pre-built functions, expect and to be, and this test from React testing library, which we can use in our unit test. And here it is showing one passed, total passed, and this is the total time it took. Run all test suits. All right, it means our configuration for Jest and React testing library Next.js 15 project is successfully added. And if I try to change it, sum 6 3, 6 plus 3 is not equals to 5. So it should fail. Okay, so let's go over here, npm run test. All right, so now you can see that one failed. And if I go up, it should throw an error that expected value was 5, but we have received 9 from this particular function. It means that this function needs to be improved. This function is not correctly implemented. There should be an error in this function which we want to go through, and this function needs to be fixed. All right, and if I want to write two unit tests, let's give over here 2 plus 3 equals to 5. And there can be another condition that 3 plus 3 is not equals to 5, and it should return true. So I can write not to be 5 because 6 is not equals to 5, which is true condition. Okay, so both aspects should be true. We can write any number of aspects within a test, but we can have a separate test, separate unit test for this particular aspect as well. All right, and we need to change it as well based upon what we are testing inside it. All right, but for now both should be passed, because currently you can see that it is running true. So both expect got true because 6 is not equals to 5 and 2 plus 3 is equals to 5. Okay, now we have other functions. Before moving towards home.tsx file, I want to show you what are the different functions that React testing library and Jest provide to us. So let's create more unit tests. So first of all, we can write, let's say I want to test object assignment. This is another unit test, and here I want to, actually I needed to close this up, comma, let's remove it and let's add it like this. All right, so inside it, we have this data any equals to 1. All right, this is an object. We can have any number of object inside it, and I want to pass 2. The reason I'm doing these kinds of things because I want to validate and talk about different functions provided by React testing library. So Superman is suggesting this particular function. So currently I've defined this object. I've appended a new property with equals to true. So data should be equals to this. So this is another function to equal that we can test. Let's see if we save it. Let's try to run unit test in the terminal. And both of these tests pass. Object assignment is passed as well, so this passed. So the expected value which we write over here, which we need to be confirmed, we already know that what should be the result of it according to our requirements, according to our use cases, according to our user diagrams that we have created according to Figma. So we should already know what is the expected value. We can define a custom constant array of expected values as well, how we want to organize it. But this is something currently I'm just trying to explain you what are the different built-in functions it provides. Okay, and we can also test the functions in between using regular expressions as well. So let's say I want to write test. There is a stop in Christoph. All right, so actually I've copied these examples from the original documentation, but one by one I'm explaining these things to you guys quickly. So there are couple of more things, then I'll come back to these components. The reason I'm trying to add this out because these kinds of utility function exist in every project. We have a utils folder, we have a lib folder in our project, and inside those we have these utility functions for optimizing or modifying the date, for calculating the search operations, for adding the binary search operations. So this is something which we can test as well. Okay, so let's come over here. So let's write expect, and let's write Christopher to be Christopher, which is obviously going to be true, but I'm going to show you to match, and I need to write stop like this. Okay, so all right, so this particular word actually contains these keywords which we can use using match. So let's run this out. So all these 3 unit tests should be passed. So these are passed. All right. And now we can have some asynchronous operations as well in order to test these things out. So in order to have these asynchronous operations, what we can do is, let me write one function that is going to return me some data. So this is an async function. This can be a utility function in our project. Get response, this is returning a promise after 100 milliseconds. It is simply returning us an object with value colon hello world. Okay. Now, how to test this asynchronous data? First of all, I want to talk about, so let's write, so this async get response should return hello world. Okay. And here it is async. And yeah, super weapon is awesome. I'm calling get response. I need to write await, and response should be equals to value hello world, which is equals to this. All right. So let's try to run this test and see if it passed or not. Yes. So if I go up, you can see that it is showing this particular file, and against this particular file we have these kind of unit test. And on the left side, let me quickly show you, it is creating all of these coverage files that we can later on use as a backup, that we can share it with someone as a result of all the unit tests in our project. All right, coverage final, we have this clover.xml, index.html. Yeah, so these kinds of things is added over here. I'll come back to this later on. I can actually trigger this out as well. So now there is a problem here. Let's say that for this particular file we might have 100 plus unit test which we are writing using this test keyword. Okay, how about we want to organize these unit tests based upon different functionalities? Let's say if we have 100 unit tests that we want to test within the home component, then we want to organize it in 5 different categories, like 20 unit tests belong to this category, 20 different categories, so that it is easy to go through and easy to read. Okay, so now how we can do that? This is called unit test grouping. So let's say that I'm going to comment this out, and there is a built-in keyword called describe. Okay, and this describe combine promise response value, and I'm combining it. This is actually, I'm grouping more than one unit tests. Okay, so inside this describe, I can have any number of unit tests. So let's copy this. First of all, one unit test. So async get should return hello world, and this grouping might have another unit test. So async get response should not return ABCD. Okay, and here rather than adding this thing, I can write ABCD. Right, so this is all about grouping. So let's see, we have this response. Let's run the unit tests and let's see what we have here. So currently it is failed, and if I go up, you can see that first 3 unit tests are directly added in this particular file, and these 2 unit tests are combined within a category. This is the category name which I provided to it. So it is easy to read, it is easy to manage, it is easy to see that where this unit test belongs to, what is the category of it, and there are other benefits of it which I'm coming to these right now. Okay, and we can have dot value, we can have ABCD. So yeah, now let's come back to this component. Let's start off by testing this particular text, whether this component contains this home within h1 element or not. Okay, so first of all, at the top, I'm going to import home component which I've just added this thing. So I have imported. Let's come down. Let's try to fix this as well. So I'm going to write to not to equal. So this is going to be true because this is obviously not equals to A, B, C, D. And yeah, all 5 tests passed. And if I go up, these 2 tests are within this category. These are simple at the home root level. But before talking about this component, let me quickly explain you very important and useful functions. Let's say there is a variable that I want to initialize before every test that I have written below. Or I want to trigger a function before once before every test, or I want to trigger a function after running each test or after running all tests. So there are 4 functions. There is a function before all, like this, and let me log something over here. So before all, okay, so currently we know that there are 5 unit tests. All right, so let me run the unit tests now, npm run tests, and here if I go up, you will see that it has logged before all. This is the text over here only once. So before all means that I want to run this particular part of code once before every test, before all these tests. Okay, and let's say there is a data and it contains an empty array, and which we want to modify, and data can be used anywhere in our unit test, in multiple unit tests, or in before every unit test. So this is something we can add data equals to 2, 3, 4, 5. This is something which we can add over here. All right, this is just an example, but in real life we want to have some real data over here. So let's save it. Currently it's giving error because I need to write this equal sign. All right, I'm not using this data right now in any of the unit tests. This is just an example. Now let's change it to before each. Okay, and let's see how many times this before each gets logged over here. Okay, so it's running. So if I go up, you can see that it is printed 5 times because there are 5 unit tests over here. It means that if we want to initialize some kind of variable, if we want to call a function before every test, this test, it will run before this test. When this test complete, it is going to run again. After that, it's going to test this one, and this is how it's going over here. And before all, before each, we have more functions as well. We have after all, we have after each, that we can use in our testing file to initialize something, or to dispose of some memory issues, or to reinitialize this variable after all or after each of these tests that exist in this particular file. All right, so now let's go down and let's come back over here. So currently this particular component have this div, and inside this div we have this h1, and we are if we run our application, we know that. Let me zoom in. So this home text exists within h1. So I've already imported this home component over here, and let me write describe now. So I'm going to write describe, and this is going to be testing home component. Okay, this is the category which I have defined to it. So describe, and inside it, I cannot write test directly inside describe. I need to write it. This is a predefined keyword. So should render the, so renders within the double quotes. So renders a heading. Okay, so let's write comma arrow function, and inside it I need to use that render function which is defined over here to load this particular component before testing this out. So render, and I can write home component over here. All right, and after that I can actually check if the home text exists anywhere on the page. First of all, this is one test which I want to write, although it's not useful, but I'm just showing you how we can test this out. So I can write const text equals to screen, which is predefined keyword, get by text, and this is going to contain uh, this thing. So I can write home text. All right, after I need to write I. So expect text to be in the document. Document means in the DOM. If I inspect this out, this home text exists in the DOM. This is what it is referring to. So elements actually, body, home, this is where it exists. All right. So now let's save it. Let's run the unit tests now. So currently 6 tests are passed. It means that the home text was existing in our page anywhere. Now let's write another unit test that is going to tell us whether that home text exists within the h1 tag or not, is a heading or not. So let's copy this out. Let's paste this over here, render the heading inside h1. Okay, this is the text which I have changed. So one thing, I'm rendering home component twice in both of these tests. What I can do is I can use before each. So before each, all right, and inside it I can simply render that out. So I don't need to render it again and again in every test that I'm going to write. All right, so this is how it's working. This is the benefit of it. So everything is working. Now let's come over here. So I can write screen dot, and there is a pre-built function. If I write get, you will see that it is providing us a lot of different functions that we can use. We can get the element by label text, we can get the element by placeholder, we can get by title, by role, by test id. Test id can be defined, which I'm going to show you just now. But there is a role. Every h tags, every h1 h2 up to h6 give us a role. Role name is a level. H1 have level 1, H2 have level 2, which I have seen from the documentation. You can always refer to the doc. So I can write get by role, and this is going to be the heading. And now I can write level. Let me close this out, and level 1. Okay, so now it is actually validating if there is text, there is a heading of level 1 exist in the document or not. It is not actually really checking the home text actually. So now let's run the test and let's see whether it returns true. Yes, it is returning true. So there is a heading, there is some kind of text, there is a h1 exist in our document. All right, so this is one level of text. Now if I want to check if there is some kind of description or not, so let me write that description over here. So let's write P, and this is my description. There is another text over here, and I don't want to use the pre-built functions, just like I have written over here, get by role, get by text. I don't have anything to detect this element. I can write data dot test id, and let's write disk. All right, now I can use the get by text id, and this is going to give us, actually this is not test id, we can write test id over here. All right, so let's go over here, and here I can actually write another test. So from now on I'm going to quickly moving further because you have already understood the concept how I'm proceeding with it. So let me quickly change the heading, test the description, and get by role I'm going to write get by test id. Okay, and what is the test id which I have written? Test id is disk. All right, and now I can write description. This is the text dot text content, and this is where I'm going to write to match description, or I don't need to write I after that. Let's see if it gets validated or not. All right, so this is validated. So we have tested there is a description with the exact description. So to match means that description keyword exists anywhere in this particular text. We can actually write, we can use to be, to equal, to validate the whole text as well. All right. So now let's say that I want to validate few more things. So inside it, let's first go over here in the page, and rather than loading the home from here, let me load home component. Actually, I need to change the name of it, landing. And now I'm going to load the home component from the components and then the home. All right, let me load another terminal and let me run the project, and it should load up this text over here. So let's refresh it, and it should load the home, and this is my description. This is for our own understanding, and see, this is existing on the UI. This is the reason we are able to test these out. Okay. Now I want to talk about some real life example, maybe a note taking app. There is a form that we need to fill up. When we hit a button, it is going to add that in the list below and keep on adding that below this. Okay, so now let's create a new component, and this is going to be the notes form.tsx. I'm not going to teach you how to create a component and build the UI for the note-taking app. I'm already having this added in my notes, so I'm just going to paste it over here. All right, so I'm going to explain you quickly. So currently, if you already know how to write code in React or Next.js, this is simply an interface. So starting off with this is the main notes app. It contains this state. And this is going to take a string of array, and there is a function which we can call to set the notes. Okay, taking up the previous notes, appending it with the new note. There is a heading. Let me quickly show you. Let's refresh. Actually, I need to add it over here in the home. So let's write notes app. Right, so let's save it. Let's go over here, and currently this is the notes app which I've just created. There is a heading, there is a description, and if I write something over here, click on add, it's gonna keep on adding it over here below. All right, this is something which I have created over here. So let's come over here. I'm passing this state variable function add note to this notes form. If I go up, this is where it exists. So it is having this input text box, this is having this button, and now whenever I try to write something inside the text box and click on this button, handle submit is going to trigger. Handle submit is going to call the add note function, which is being passed to this, which is the function from the parent component, and making the text box empty. This is a simplest example which I could write, and this is a real world example as well. And handle change, I'm just updating the state variable over here. All right, so now we have another thing which is simply showing the list of all the nodes, and this is the variable which I'm passing to it, and this is simply using .map and show the list of all the nodes over here. And this is an example which I'm going to test now. So let's go over here. So let's create a new file, and let's write nodes form.test.tsx. all right, so let's save it. Let me close these couple of files. I'll come back to these files because I want to show you how we can test the routing which I'm going to add in the home component. All right, so let's go over here in the nodes test, and first of all I'm simply going to import the same kind of things which I have imported in the previous testing component. All right, and our Jest command is automatically detect there are two testing files. Now it's going to go through the tests written inside the both of these tests. All right, so now inside it I'm going to write describe. This is going to be the testing notes app component. It is suggesting few things. I'm not going to select these. Before each, let's try to render notes app now before each of the tests, just like I've added it in the home tests. Okay, so first of all what I need to do is, what are the different units? I need to test whether this component contains notes app title or not. Okay, so let me quickly add it over here. Renders a title, notes app, expect text to be in the document. Let's try to run that particular command, npm run test. So now you can see that there are 9 past tests. It is actually logging before each. I need to remove, in fact, let's try to comment these things out. I don't want to say it. This was just for elaboration. It is showing this warning as well, means that there are some uncovered lines. Obviously there is too much code written inside this particular component, and we have only tested this title at the moment. All right, but all of our tests are passed. One more thing, we can have a lot of testing files. We want to only test the notes form component, and we don't want to run the rest of the testing files. We can do that rather than adding the test command directly inside the terminal. Let me add that over here. So let's see if I want to test notes. This is the command which I want to write. So I can write npx jest, and I need to write notes form.test.tsx. All right, this is the command which if I write, let's write this npm run test notes, and it is going to only consider this particular file. And now you can see that there was one test which is passed, and obviously there are some uncovered files, and now it is showing the particular test which we are actually rendering. Testing notes component, which is the category, this is the file, and this is the test title. All right, so and also we can add multiple lines of code over here for testing notes, for testing about page, for testing landing page. So let's go over here. So currently we have tested the title, and now let's quickly test the description as well. So let's add over here. So now you can see that I have added this disk over here, data hyphen test ID disk, add new notes in the list. So we should be having that in the document. Okay, so now let's run that command, and now it is passing 2 tests, and there are 2 tests which are being passed. Before moving further, I want to talk about, there's a concept of test driven development. Okay, if I go over here, it is going to show that first we write the test and then we write the code. So initially we fail all the tests. We write the test, we fail it, and then we fix the code. This is the practice which many developers follow, and it is quite famous and it is quite useful as well. Okay, so this works well while we are developing our project. This is not for the maintenance later on if we have deployed and completed our project, but while we are developing, this is how we need to follow the approach. So let me show you what do I mean by that. So let's go over here, notes form, and currently if I just comment this thing out. All right, so currently I imagine that I have not written this description in the code right now. So now I'm going to go over here, I'm going to write the test. I know that this is not added in the code yet, so I'm just failing it first of all. So whenever a team lead who wants to assign a junior developer some kind of task, and the task is to write a p tag and write some description inside it. Okay, this is the smallest task someone might have. So I'm going to write a test and it's going to fail it, and all the unit tests which are failing, which is letting the junior developer know that all the failed tests should be passed. Okay, and what he needs to do is he needs to make all the unit tests correct. Means for making this correct, he will go over here, he will add the description over here. All right, and it will keep on testing whether the unit testing is passing or not. So now if I try to run this unit testing file, it is going to fail this out because it's going to throw that it is not finding anything like disk test ID in our project. This is test driven development, and now we have failed it. We have written test, we have run the first test, we are failing it. Now let's fix this unit test. Let's write this again. Okay, let's rerun it. Now we have done the test driven development approach, and we can do it with any kind of stuff. We first write test, we keep on writing the code for next things. All right, so now let's go over here. Let's write a unit test and see whether our text box exists or not. If I go over notes, This is a child component of that parent component. I've directly added it over here in this file. It would be a good practice if I create a separate file and put this component inside that, but this is a separate topic. Our focus is only on the unit testing. Okay, so notes component form, and it contains this input. All right, and I'm going to be using this placeholder, enter a note, and check if this input text box exists in the DOM or not. Okay, so let me first of all comment this out. I'm just talking about test driven development, although I've already written that. And let's come over here. All right, so let's try to see. Let's copy this out. Let's paste it. Render input text box. Okay, and I'm going to write screen.get by placeholder text, and this is going to be enter a note. Okay, and this text input, let me change it to make it meaningful. And now let's run it and fail it because it does not exist. It is failed. All right. And now I'm going to test this out. Let's uncomment this. And this is the text, enter a note, and let's fix it. npm run test notes. Now all of these three tests are passed. Render input text is passed. It means that input text box is existing in our document in the DOM. Now I want to test whether this button exists or not. Let's quickly add that test from my notes. Okay, so let's add it over here. So you can see that add node button renders. So I'm getting the button by get by role, and the button already having a role with name button. We don't need to define the role in our button. So this has to be in the document. Let's verify that. Let's run it. And all of these should be passed, and add node button render. So it means that in the DOM it exists. Next thing I want to test, if I go over here, you can see that if I don't write anything inside the text box, I've added a check that if node is empty, then make this button disabled. Although color is not getting changed, but you can see that the cursor is not getting changed as well. And I'm not able to click the button as well. If I write something, you'll see that the cursor is getting changed, and I'm able to click that out. Let's refresh it. It is getting invisible because it's just a local temporary variable which is storing that list. Okay, which is fine. Okay, for testing purpose. Now I want to test that if I don't enter anything inside it, whether this button is disabled or not. Okay, so here I'm just checking. I'm actually checking it. Add node button in the document. I can have it by default. It is going to be disabled whenever the component renders first time. Check add node button is disabled or not. Get by button just like the above check, and here I'm checking it is to be disabled, which is a predefined function. So let's test this out. So npm run test nodes. So you can see that it is getting passed. It means that the button is disabled. So all of these checks, all of these validations, all of this QA testing is being passed. So now I want to test if I write something in this text box, whether this button gets enabled or not. So this is a bit complex unit test. So let's see how we can go with it. Okay, so let's start off with fill the input text box to make button enabled. All right, so how to fill it from the unit test? It is not going to be actually filling it on the UI, but it is just for testing purpose. Okay, first of all, I need to get the note by placeholder. So text input, let's bring that in. I've got its reference. Now after adding it, I want to fill it up. So how to fill it up? To fill it up, I've already imported this fire event function from React testing library. So fire event dot change. So yeah, I'm using the super maven, which is awesome. Fire event dot changed. I'm telling it that fill this input with this particular value. Test node is a value, test node 1. All right, So I filled this up. Now I want to test whether the button is still disabled or not. So let's get the button reference and let's import this line, and rather than adding the disabled, I'm going to write not disabled. So after I fill something, this button should not be disabled. This is a one functionality. So let's run it and it should be passed. Yeah, so it is passed. It means that after filling this out, our button is getting enabled. It is not disabled. So our functionality is working fine. Initially, if I just remove it, it would be a test-driven development. So we step by step can move further to it. All right. So next thing, what I want to do is we can have some more things. We can have whether the button have a blue color, whether it contains the text add note or not, what is the margin between these two. So it can be any level of unit testing if we want to add. Okay, so now if I write something, I want to test after filling something over here. If I click over add note button, then whether it is getting added in the list or not. Okay, if I do it 2 times, I want to test whether the list contains 2 elements or not. If I do it 3 times, I want to test whether the list contains 3 elements or not. So if I go to the UI, you will see that I have added test ID, a notes list, which I can use to add a reference to this UL. And after that, I can check the number of LI exists inside this UL tag. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this input text box and click on this button manually from the unit test 2 times, filling it up 2 times, clicking on it 2 times, and check the length of it. If it's 2, it means that our functionality of adding note is working fine. Okay, and it is being visible on the UI as well, because this is going to be gets generated in the DOM. Okay, so let's log this up. So this is thing. Now I'm first going to bring that in input text box, and also I'm also going to bring the reference of the notes list using test ID, which I've already added data.test ID. Notes list and the button using the role button, I've already shown you how to get that. So I'm adding the reference of all the 3 things over here. Okay, so before doing anything, let's verify that if notes list, the length of notes list have 0 length, the length of li have 0 length. This is the first test that we can check. It's up to you how we want to proceed. So expect notes list dot query selector all to have length 0. Yeah, it should be passed because I've not added any test as of now, any note over here. All right, so notes test list, it is passed, so it is correct. It is not going to load up. If I load this component first of all, it is not going to show anything over here. This is the test which I have validated. Now let's try to add that 2 times. Okay, so now just like above, test note 1, let's try to get this and add it. I have filled up this text box with the target test note 1, and after filling it up, I want to click the button. How to click it? Fire event click add note button. This is going to click the button. So now this should be no more 0. Now I want to do it 2 times. So test note 2, because I know that after I fill this thing up, this is going to get empty. This is another use case that after I click on the button, this is going to get empty because of this, the text box. It's up to you whether you want to test this or not, but I'm not testing it. Now let's copy it. Let's paste it. So it is going to have length 2. All right, so it should be passed because we have added 2 nodes. Let's run this and let's see whether it gets passed or not. All right, test nodes list, so it is passed. So we can have a separate unit test for this kind of thing. We can have a separate unit test for this thing. It's up to us how we want to proceed with it. All right. So now one important point that I want to talk about is the benefit of it. As you can see that writing unit tests taking a lot of development time. Developer need to write the code as well as he needs to write the unit tests. Okay. And it is going to increase the development cost for you if you are building project yourself, and it is going to development cost for the client as well, who is paying you on per hour basis, or it is going to delay the expected completion project timeline. But what is happening is, this is one disadvantage of it, that it is taking time of development and it is going to delay the project completion date. Okay, but the one benefit is that we can run one command and test everything within seconds. Okay, imagine there are multiple pages, there are 1000 use cases that a manual QA, a real guy, needs to go through. He can take days or weeks to rerun these things. There might be a chance that you add a new feature, and adding a new feature might affect the pre-built existing features as well. So manual QA needs to go through all the use cases, user stories, to validate whether the previous features are still working or not, or the new feature is also working or not. So at the end, the maintenance cost, the testing cost is going to get increased for you and for the client who is paying you. Okay, so later on, initially, client need to spend some money to let you write the unit tests, and once the unit tests are written for the whole application, he don't need to pay extra to the QA. They He can just run one command and validate that all the previous functionality is working fine or not. That will be tested in few seconds, and this is one major benefit of it. Okay, if you are working in a team, many developers, other developer might can affect your feature, you can affect the feature of other developer which he have built. So both the developers can run the unit test and validate whether all the unit test built by other developers is still working fine, and it is quite awesome. And this is the reason to decrease the maintenance cost later on when we add a new feature. Client or the developers opt for writing unit tests in their projects. All right, so now I'm done with the notes form testing. Now I want to talk about how to test the data which we fetch from the APIs. We call an API return the data, and which we render on the UI, maybe get all the posts, all the users, all the comments. So this is something which I want to talk about, and for that I would like to create a new component, and in that component I'm going to call an API and fetch the data from that. So let's create a new file, and I'm going to call it to do and photo list, which I'll be fetching from API. And again, I've already written its code. This is a simple component calling an API, and it is showing the data. So this is the JSON placeholder. If I show you, let's copy this up, let's open it. It's a public API, and it is returning an array of objects, and each object contains user ID, title, and the completed. This is something which I'm fetching over here. I'm storing it in the state variables, and here I'm just using the map, and before map I'm just showing the first 5 objects, just so that it doesn't go out of the screen, because we just want to add some testing to this data. Okay, so now let's save it, let's go over here and let's bring that in to do photo list, and now it should be visible on our UI. All right, so you can see that to do's, this is the title, and it's showing pending, completed, based upon what we have coming in from that API. So currently you can see that it is showing the title, and now I'm checking the completed. I think it was returning Boolean, yes. So if completed is true, I'm showing completed. If completed is false, I'm showing pending. And there is no such kind of check for the photos. Okay, photos will be having the similar kind of data. It's just showing the title. All right, so now I'm going to first of all go over here, and I'm going to add a command for testing this particular file. I don't want to actually run all these tests. Okay, to do photo list tests which I have yet to create. So let's go over here, let's create a new file, and this is going to be to do and photo list.test.tsx. All right, so this is added. Let's close it. Let's close it as well. All right, so now I'm going to run this command test to do's. Okay, so in the terminal, let me clear this out. npm run test to do's. Let's run it. There is no tests exist, one failed. So your test suite must contain at least one test. This is the reason it got failed. It contains nothing. Okay, we have not written anything. So now I'm going to come over here, and first of all, I'm going to start off importing few stuff just like before. Render screen, wait for, to do, and photo list, which is the component actually. Okay. Now, there is one thing which I want to talk about here. There is a backend stuff which we are performing. Whenever we call something from the database, from an API, there might be a chance that network is not working. Okay, if there is an internet issue, it doesn't mean that the front end UI implementation is wrong. If the server is slow and it does not return something, it is returning this data after 1 hour because of the slowness of the server. Again, it does not mean that your implementation on the UI side is incorrect. Okay, so this is the reason we are not going to test the real API's data while writing unit test. We create mock data to avoid all these server slowness issues, network issues, and such kind of fetching data are usually done through APIs, through the backend. So the backend developers need to write separate tests for testing those APIs, whether it's returning the correct data or not. Okay, but if we try to fetch the data from the client side, we don't really need to test the real data coming in from API, because it does not validate whether our front end implementation or not, because of multiple reasons: network, server slowness, or there can be the server failed, server is not working, server is switched off. So for that, I'm going to explain you the mocking concepts. Mocking means we are going to create the expected data which we are expecting to be coming in from the API which we are using over here. Okay, usually we add these kinds of URL in a separate file, or we have these kinds of URLs in env file. Okay, so now first of all, I need to write a fetch. Since we are using the fetch function of JavaScript, so I need to define original fetch equals to global dot fetch. Okay, and then let's define describe testing to do list component. Okay, like this, and inside it I'm going to write after each, so global dot fetch original fetch. All right, so for creating mocks, this is a kind of workaround which I have found. I usually write this workaround. You might have different workaround for making this work. And now let's test this out, that if I want to render this data, I need to fill this to do's manually using the mock data and check if it shows this list of data or not on the DOM. Okay, so now I'm going to add an it statement like this, and should fetch to do's from APIs and update state. And now inside it, let's create a mock data which is should be similar to which is coming from that API. And currently the real API was also having the user ID, which I have not written. The reason is that I'm not using user ID currently in my UI. So if I don't have it in the mock data, that is fine. If I used in the UI, I might have added it over here. Okay, so now I've created the mock data expecting that this is the data coming from API to avoid network server errors and these kinds of errors. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to write this kind of code which you can pause and you can write this out yourself. In the TypeScript, it gives few errors because of TypeScript. So I'm just ignoring the TypeScript promise. And after this, I'm just rendering that particular component. Okay. So after rendering this particular component, I need to use this particular function wait for. Okay. I know that if the title is to do after, so currently at this particular point, it is going to be called automatically on the UI in the unit test. So if I write expect over here, so global dot had to have been called with this particular UI, which we are calling over here. This is just mimicking the data. This is not really calling this particular API. Okay. Now before this, what I can do is I can write a wait for like this, and now I can write expect screen. Let's click the tab, and rather than to do, I need to write to do one hyphen pending. Okay, because I've added a check on the UI that if completed is false, that I need to show pending. So this is the reason I'm just adding the pending over here. Okay, so there seems some error, so I need to write another parentheses over here. All right, now to do two, this is this has to be completed true, but in the UI this is showing completed over here. All right, so now let's test this out whether it works or not according to the UI of this component. Okay, so let's go over here, let's run this thing, and yes, it is passed. Should fetch to-dos from APIs and update the state. So we are mimicking the data which should be expecting from that API, and according to that data, we are generating the mock data, and we are generating that DOM contains this kind of UI according to this mock data over here. And you can see that I'm not explaining anywhere over here that it should show pending, completed. It is all based upon the UI kind of data which I am rendering over here. All right, and just like this to do, I can have a similar setup for the photos as well. Okay, so let's copy and paste this up over here. So rather than having this thing should fetch photos from API and update state, so I'm going to update the mock data since I'm only using the title. Okay, let's update this over here. And since I'm only using the title on the UI, that's why I've only added the title. I don't need the ID either, but I'm just adding it over here. Okay, so now to do photo list, this is the same component which I'm using. Now rather than adding this thing, what it does, we have the title photo 1, photo 2, although the real API return different thing, but I've added this mock data which I can validate over here. Okay, so let's run this. Let's add it. Screen get by text photo 1 to be in the document, photo 2 to be in the document. This is how I'm just printing it over here. And I can also check by adding the test ID over here, and I can add an expect statement that the number of li elements inside this ul are 2, because we are adding the 2 photos in the UI. It's up to us how we want to proceed, how many levels of unit test we want to write. Now I need to update this API. Let's update that to photos like this. And now let's run this test, npm run test to dos. Now you can see that it is passed. Both of these tests are passed with this mock data. Now I want to test the routing. So let's add one link that navigates to another route. But I'm going to actually add a new route in Next.js. So I'm just going to add it like this. So my route. So let's come over here in the home.tsx file and add a button over here below this p tag. And I need to add a router which is coming from the next/navigation. So use router. Okay, let's save it. Let's go over here. Component use router. So when there is user interaction, I need to make this component rendered from the client side. All right. It doesn't look like a button, but if I click on it, you will see that I'm navigated to this particular route with this particular keyword, my route. This is referring to this folder name which I have added. Now let's open up this home.test.tsx file. Now I need to actually detect where if I click on this particular button, if whether I navigate to this route or not, which I'm passing over here. All right. But before doing that, let me tell you that whenever we are using the built-in functions provided by Next.js, like next/navigation, it contains many other things as well, like use params, use path name, use search param, use selected layout segments, and these kinds of things. Then again, we need to use mocks. There are two methods which I know, which I have found, which I use in my application while writing unit tests. Okay, so now before going further, I'm going to actually comment all this out to avoid any kind of confusion, to check the results in my terminal. Okay, so I have commented these out. Let's go over here below. Okay, so first of all, I need to import that use router which I am using in this home component. Okay, so here I'm just importing that next navigation use router. First of all, I need to mock this use navigation using just mock function. Okay, so this is one method which I'm writing, just mock next navigation, and it is simply returning a function using use router. If I would have been using use path name, use params, then I would have returning that as well over here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the navigation with first method. I'm going to show you both the methods for writing the test to test the routing, test navigation to another route. First of all, I don't need to create an instance of it. There can be the other methods as well. So I can write the mock push equals to jest function, which I'm triggering. And then I need to write use router dot mock return value, and inside it I need to write push mock push. Okay, and this is simply a TypeScript error, and we can simply ignore it by writing TypeScript ignore. It will not cause any functionality error even if we don't write this particular comment over here. Okay, so mock return value use router, and this is it. What we can do is I'm going to render that component now, render home. Okay, and now let's get the button screen get by role. Let's click on that, and we don't need to write slash. And now what it is doing is fetching the button using role, fire event, clicking the button, and then I'm testing it not by this button. I'm testing it using mock push because I'm using the router. If we were using some link li, then there might have I might not be using this router. There can be the href attributes as well in the link which we can use. In that case, there is another method to trigger that out. But for the buttons, whenever we are using this thing, use router, this is the way to go with. Mock push to have been called with my route. This is the name of route. So this is going to detect that after clicking button, this is going to take us to the my route. So let's test this out. Over here, let's test the test to dos. Actually, not test to dos. I need to test the home. Okay, so let's go over here. Package.json, I've not written anything for the home. So let's test home npx test home. Okay, so now in the terminal, let's save it. Let's go over here, test home. Let's run it. It should contain one test, and now you can see that it is showing test navigation to another route. It is working perfectly fine, and we have tested that our routing is working perfectly fine. Let me show you another method. Okay, so which is slightly different. Should navigation, whatever the message you want to write, and inside it again I'm going to create this particular function, mock push jest function, but rather than using this use router dot mock return value, I'm going to add a spy on for that. Okay, so use router mock jest spy on require next navigation use router, and then I'm going to mock return value push mock. Okay, now what I can do is let's write get by text render home. Let's click on the fire event dot click get by text navigate to my route. So I have actually fetched it navigate to my route. This is the text which I have fetched, and this is button which is going to get clicked. And after that I can have it expect push mock to have been called with my route. And after that it is a good practice to write use router mock restore. Okay, so let's click this out, npm run test this out. So both of these test cases are passed, you can see. And there is no uncovered line because we are covering all the lines of code for this particular component. All right, so finally at the end I want to show you one thing. So we have this test. After that I'm going to write coverage, although I think it is already enabled. But if it is not enabled over here, let's go up. Yeah, so it is already enabled collect coverage, so we don't need to do that. But in case you don't have it, you can write this flag, and it is going to maintain the coverage as well, that how many lines of code for that particular component are being tested. It is a good practice to have a coverage of 90% plus for your component to be tested, and it is going to make sure that using unit test you are validating 90% of tests, 90% of functionality or the UI for your whole application on different pages on different components. All right, so this was the basic introduction of the unit test, but it covers all the basics of unit testing using Jest and React testing library. If you have any question, you can contact me on LinkedIn. I've given the link of my LinkedIn profile in the description of this video, as well as on my main channel page as well. So I hope that if you have learned something new from this video, if yes, do subscribe my channel and like my video as well. I'm gonna be creating my next video on end-to-end automated testing using Cypress. If I show you over here, this is the Cypress. It is used to automate testing, just like the real person open up this application on the browser and start checking what is the text, start entering something, not the unit test, but start entering really by opening that URL and clicking on this button and see what is happening, whether we are navigating to other route or not, whether this data is being fetched from the API or not. This is called the automated end-to-end testing, which I'm going to be talking about in my next video. So till then, do subscribe my channel, support me. I'm just requesting you guys, and comment below if you have any question. Till then, see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.